before he left, he talked about, I think he was trying to link between Mauritius and funding. And then there was this talk about Algeria and funding. How difficult is it? Why is it looking difficult for us to trace the source of funds for all of this? Because if you trace the funds, wouldn't you sort this out to some extent?
Let me answer that just with a phrase. It's difficult to trace funding. When I say funding, even back to the $1 trillion we spent on subsidy because of the bread and butter of politics. Bold face.
You know, one of the things that, you know, the governor also said is how leadership, I mean, he says, I don't blame the military, they've done well in spite of all the challenges they face. Considering the circumstances they're in, they've done well. What I blame is we, the leaders, or something to that effect. And some people are saying, if you look at the different levels of leadership, have they done well, or can they do more in terms of what they're doing? People are also pointing fingers at the governor as well, as to say, what have you two done, in helping quell the crisis? Can you help us, look at the different levels of leadership, what they're doing and what they could be doing even better to help, the military achieve their target?
Good. Governor Shetima said we,
yes.
All-encompassing, himself inclusive. When it comes to leadership is about so many things, not the least of which is sacrifice. You see, the Boko Haram didn't fall out of the sky. The Boko Haram is actually what you can call a compendium of so many remote happenstances. If we go back to decompose the Boko Haram to its very initial genesis, there were actually political thugs that later went haywire. There were political thugs who later perceived of themselves as kingmakers. And if we could put somebody in power, then we actually are the power. And now they have decided to design the kind of power they want. And based on certain structural, functional, and political dysfunctionalities, they say we're not getting this, we're not getting that, this is not moving well, so let's turn it to a Muslim state. Okay? The powers that be, their ex-sponsors turned against them. So we are now seeing a situation where they've gone rogue. There is an armed forces that is actually going to handle them if allowed swiftly. But then the political intrigues involved makes a lot of pussyfooting imperative. Don't forget the generals, to the Chief of Army Staff, with all due respect, are subjects of a civil dispensation. Let me take you back again in history. Once upon a time, a certain General Buhari was the GOC 3rd Armored Division. That was during Alhaji Shehu Shagari's time. And Cameroon actually tested our wheel on the borders of, was it Gongola State then? Or somewhere around there. And what did this GOC do? Though it was wrong. But the soldier in him set him marching one of our brigades 30 kilometers or so into Cameroon. He sat his brigade there, and we started talking about leaving Cameroon, not even there having encouraged into ours. Now I tell you, if you can just unleash the army, if we can take the politics and the intrigues out of it, that business will be closed in their mic.
But what about politicking within the army? Within the military?
Of course.
If you say the politicians are the weight on the military, the armed forces, how about the armed forces themselves being a weight to themselves? Is that possible?
It's possible. Don't forget, Nyota, the military is a part of a whole. The whole is a democratic dispensation. And the military itself is sub-civil authority. The military are actually stewards. They are serving a political dispensation. Okay? So you cannot outpace or outrun your political leaders. So if by virtue of the dispensation, this politicking has seeped into the ranks of the military, why not? Of course, yes.
And that's that could affect the fight against the insurgency.
Of course. We are not saying that a civil dispensation cannot do it. But you see, when it comes to matters of national security, we have to pocket certain things.
But that's where we were in terms of analyzing. You're taking us back into history. Now we are where we are. We have a situation where people are displaced, people have been killed, people are still being killed. What do you think the leaderships at leadership at different levels can do, to help mitigate this particular trend?
They can, as he said, close ranks. When it comes to issues of Borno State and the Boko Haram, there will be no political party.
You're not saying that?
Sorry?
You're not saying that closing of ranks?
Yes, what I'm saying, what do you mean? We have to put the differences aside. It's not about he's doing it well, he's not doing it well. It's not about we are northern elders, we are eastern elders, we are southern elders. It's not about we are Christian Association of Nigeria, no, we are this. It's about Nigeria. They kill across board. If we can get in one voice people saying let's go do it across board, religious, political, leaders of thought, then you are going to see people get out of the way.
Well, this question from Hope, he says, how can the military overcome that language and cultural similarity between the north and our border countries that aid Boko Haram?
Yes, if you look at Borno State and the neighboring states, the cultural and language similarities are very, very, very close. Okay? The military can overcome it. Overcoming it is a function of intelligence. Okay? People, you see, the Boko Haram militants do not necessarily have to be 100% foreigners. Okay? I speak English. I'm not a Briton. Okay? Now, intelligence is key to these operations. And I want to believe that within the army, within the air force, within the security agencies, they have just enough intelligence. But as I'm telling you, as I speak to you, the body language I've seen in the past, getting to 9 months now, we've declared the state of emergency thing. It's actually pointing to someone who is robust enough to do the job, but is docile. Why would the army be docile?
It's a question that we're begging for answers.
Exactly. The army is only being docile because they are not given the go-ahead to do as they would want to do.
Go ahead in terms of...
Yes, indeed. Let me ask you a question. Why would you declare a state of emergency and leave a governor sitting? When you decide to bring the army in, it means all else has failed. That's democracy for you. And when you bring your generals in and give them a marching order, there will be no buts there because we're assuming in the hallowed chambers you've exploited all the options and you've seen that there's only the big stick option.
But a host of people say that if you leave the governor there, in real situations and in real terms, he's mainly a figurehead. The authorities of security have been taken from him, and that shouldn't stop the army from doing whatever it is that they need to do.
Absolutely, it shouldn't stop them. But as I told you, the army takes instructions from somewhere. Now, let me give you something about politics. When you actually take a decision, the decision could seem right to you who took it. But then you have to take the position of those that are looking at and listening to the decision you're taking. The body language they're going to perceive of that decision. Then they can jump on the boss of that decision to exploit the situation. Now we've taken a decision, we're going out there, we're going to do business, and the governor remains sitting. Say, okay, fine. Since the governor has remained sitting, that means it's like a state of emergency with a human face. Now, a state of emergencies are not supposed to have an inhuman face. But then you're going to be seeing a state of emergency that is a bit diluted. Okay? That dilution gives in room for civil presence here and considerations, and that is being exploited by the Boko Haram.
Captain Aliyu, we all know that the Commander-in-Chief had said to the leadership of the military, end this insurgency. He has said it several times. So is that not a direct instruction to the military to go all out and end this insurgency?
What else do they need?
What else do they need?
Okay. I'll put it to you this way. Somewhere in the papers this morning, I saw something like the presidency, my hands are tied.
Yeah.
Good. As a commander-in-chief, you just walked out of the presidency and the insurgency. And you picked up a paper and you saw the presidency saying their hands are tied.
But their hands are tied not by the laws, but by international laws, they say.
Yeah, because he says that the military cannot just raid cross-border hideouts because of those regulations.
We're not talking about crossing borders. We're talking about, the people that have...
that's what that story is about.
Yes, I know. Just without reading the story, you see my hands are tied. You see, morale is not a function of very big salaries and the best guns. Morale could be psychological. Okay? Morale could even come from just doing something like, let me give you an example. With all due respect to the former chief of army staff, if I was the chief, I would have moved my office to Borno State long ago. There's something motivating about seeing the chief himself on ground zero. Let's do it together. Okay? There's fire on the mountain. If we have to take the mountain out, not only the fire, so be it. But I'm telling you that when it comes to the Nigerian politics, I know there are a lot of intrigues involved. And the body languages we are seeing are pointing in the direction of these intrigues. These are people that have a history of doing it officially and unofficially, swiftly.
Let's stay with the issue of hands being tied.
Okay.
And cross-border fighting here.
Okay.
It's believed that there's insurgents coming from across the border. I was in Borno in August, and we went to some of the camps that were routed by the military. From the camp where we stood, we could look across into Chad. There was no post. There's no border post there. These people could walk across anyhow. And speaking to the villagers, they tell us how they took their daughters, they married them by force, took their crops, took their property. And when they were routed, they went with all of these things. Now, it appears that this is still happening. They're still coming across the borders.
Good.
Is that not enough to tie the hands of the military?
Fine. Your hands are tied as far as activities across the border is concerned. Are your hands tied on this side of it?
One of the explanations we also heard, sorry to interrupt you, you're asking a question.
Okay.
I want you to reply based on also what we heard in terms of how the insurgents also mix with villagers, and so it continues to make it difficult for the military to root out those people from amongst the midst of the villagers without
because they don't have a particular border dressing.
Without capital,
civilian casualty.
Without civilian casualty. I think there's a military term for it.
Yes. You see, I'll tell you something, Maupe.
Yes.
The basic scenarios involved, battlefields differ, but the principles are the same. In Liberia, nobody wears Charles Taylor's uniform, nor the car majors, nor the MPFL. And they mixed across all the 68 districts and 15 counties. How did they do it? Have you ever tried to imagine that? That's what is happening in Maiduguri. Of course, they're not going to write it on their faces and say we are this and that. There's what you call cross-border, cultural and social infusion. You have intermarriages and everything, fine. They speak the same languages, fine. But then, when you are fighting guerrillas, there are principles, there are modus operandi you employ. And this can be done. Let me just try to put something on the table here before you. During the first leg of the state of emergency, the first 6 months, do you recall names like Sagir? Do you recall names like Hassan, Sambisa? Where are they? I'm not saying they should have remained there perpetually. But then, why are those that are there now not trying to either rubbish what these guys have done by doing better, or at least breasting the tapes? Why are we seeing a dilution? Why are we seeing a recession? Look, there is no doubt
even though there's a change of guard in the military hierarchy.
Yes, what I'm trying to tell you is
there still a recession?
what I'm saying is, why are we seeing a recession in terms of the grounds the army has held? Why are they losing grounds? See, there is no doubt about the fact that this army can do it. They started out so well. I am of the fact that the federal government having assured us that the army can do it is key, is correct. But there is still seemingly lacking the political will to close that business.
Well, That's where we'll have to end it. Retired Captain Umar Aliyu, security consultant, giving us his perspective on fighting insurgents. Thank you for coming on this morning.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll return after this break. Join us again.